Welcome back. Let's move on with the next task number 53. Here we are going to find the permutation and combination of the given values of n and r with the help of pointers. Okay, so now let's look at the formula for permutation and combination. So this is the formula for permutation and combination. Okay, so as soon as you see look at this formula, you can understand one thing, that there has to be one function which is going to calculate the factorial, right? Because we are using factorial at so many places, right? So 1 2 3 4 5 places, so we cannot do this 5 times. So instead we will write a function called factorial and call it to calculate this particular ratio, right? Now second thing to note here is there are two values that we have to compute. One is combination and one is permutation, right? So by just looking at it, we can say that we will create two functions, one for combination and one for permutation, and those two functions will use another function of factorial to find the final result, right? So let us see how to do this, but there is a slight twist to this. Again, we have to use pointers to solve this problem. Okay, so let's see how to do it. Okay, so let's begin. First of all, we have to take the input of n and r from the user, right? So let's take n and r, right? Two values from the user. Then let's take two more variables. Let's call it as combination and permutation. Okay, so these two variables will be storing those two values, right? So we have total four values. Okay, now our task is to first write a function to okay, let's first begin with the input, right? Input part, let's finish that. Okay, so let's first print what is this program about. Okay, so I have just mentioned the program's objective, right? Then next I am going to take the input of n and r from the user, right? So enter n, then I will do a simple scanf and I will ask I will read the value of n from the user. Now similarly I will take the input for r from the user. Okay, so that is all for the for my input part, right? So now the next part is I want to calculate the combination and permutation, right? So let's begin with any one of them. Okay, so let's say we want to find combination, right? So it is combination is equal to, right? Now instead of writing the formula directly over here, we will create a function for that, right? Okay, and instead of returning the variable over here, so what we are going to do is we are going to slightly change the way the things are going to be done. Okay, so we are going to send, we are going to create two functions, one for let's say we are not going to return anything. Okay, so now the concept here is if we return the value, then there is no need of pointers, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to send the n and r to the function along with the combination. Okay, and the function itself will change the value and give it to the main back, okay, without even returning anything. Okay, so let's see how that can be done. Okay, so now let's write a function. Let's call it calculate. Let's call this calculate comb. Okay, so this is the function that I'm going to call. Okay, now first what I'm going to do is I'm going to send n and r without using pointers. Okay, I'm going to send n, r and comb. Okay, these three things I'm going to send. Now you may ask why I'm sending comb, because the only input is n and r and the output is actually comb, so this should have been the return type, right? But when you're using pointers, you have to send the output also along with the input. Okay, so let me just tell you how it works, and then you will understand it better. Okay, so once I send all these three things, but I'm sending it without a pointer. Okay, just see to it. Okay, and then I have to accept it over here. Let's do calculate comb. Okay, and here I have to accept three variables which are all integers, right? So let me give the same name so that we are not confused, right? So int n, int r and int com, right? So I have three variables set. Now we know the what is the value of combination, right? So combination is actually equal to the factorial. Let me just check the formula. Combination is n factorial divided by r factorial into n minus r factorial, right? So I will just write. So for the time being, let's assume there is a function called factorial. Okay, we are going to write that function in a while. Okay, so let's assume that we have a function called factorial, right? So you just have to give a number and it will give you the factorial as a return type. Okay, so if that is the case, then I can simply give n over here, right? Then divide by, then again factorial. I will just copy this and paste it over here, factorial of r, then into again factorial of n minus r. Okay, so let me just check if this is the correct formula. Yes, so n factorial divided by r factorial into. So again, just to remind you, I have not yet defined this function. I will define it in a while. Okay, so let's assume that this function I have already defined. Okay, so if I run this command, then obviously it will calculate comp, okay, and give it to you, right? But now the problem is, since we are not returning anything, right, it's void. Since you are not returning, so the comp value over here, okay, so that will not be reflected inside main function. Why? Because it is a normal variable, right? And if you remember, whenever you pass a variable, only the value is copied over here and not the actual memory location, right? So basically whatever you do to this comp function inside this function is never will not affect this main function. Okay, so every function has its own variables even though the names are same, right? So this is not going to affect, right? So but we want it to get affected, right? Now in that case, what we can do is actually to send this comp using pointers rather than using value. Okay, so instead of passing the value over here, I'm going to pass the address. Okay, now to do that, what you have to do is you just have to convert this, the third variable, into a pointer. Okay, so to convert this variable into pointer, all you have to do is add a star in between them, right? So now this becomes a pointer, and the problem with pointer is it can store only address, right? So this will not work. So instead of this, I will just add an address over here. So this will now get the address and pass it on to this function. And now it will come over here. Okay, and here you will find out some value from this function, and this has to be stored at the value of this comp, right, not at comp. Okay, so basically when you do this equation directly, it will store it at the address, right, but I don't want to change the address, I want to change the value at that particular address. Now whenever you have you want to access the value, I have already explained, we have to use star in front of it. Okay, so basically this star and this star is different. Okay, so this star is used to declare and this star is used to find the value at. Okay, so basically what this means is I am trying to get the value at comp, and that value will be replaced with the new value from this function. Okay, whatever is the result of this particular expression. Okay, so now the advantage here is, even though I'm not returning anything, okay, so even though I'm not returning anything, I will this value is actually getting stored at the same place where this comp is, right, so that's why it will also get reflected in this function. So that is very important to understand. So that is how I have handled this. Let's now finish one combination part first, and then we will write the permutation. Okay, now this program will not run yet because I have not yet defined factorial function. Let's do that. Okay, so let's now factorial, it's going to be an integer. The reply of the factorial will be integer, because if you just check the formula, it is integer divide by integer into integer, right, so it's the result will also going to be integer. So let's make this factorial function. Okay, so it is going to accept a variable, let's say x. Okay, you can give any name to this, it doesn't matter, right, so I've given the name x. Now here all you have to do is just write a logic to calculate the factorial. Okay, so there are many different logics, you can use any. You can use a for loop to find the factorial, or you can use recursion function to find factorial. Anything will do. Okay, so here I am going to use recursion. Let's use recursion. Okay, so return x into, I'm going to call again x, but this time decrement it by 1. Okay, and before returning I will do a simple check. If x is less than or equal to 1, okay, if it is less than or equal to 1, I will simply return 1. Okay, so that always remember, whenever you are doing recursion, there has to be an exit condition to it. Okay, so I have done that. Now this function will give me factorial, and it will come over here, it will calculate the factorial, return it is not going to return anything, but it is going to change the comp variable, which in turn will affect over here, and now the only part left is to print it out. Okay, so let's just print out the value. Okay, so the combination is equal to %d and comb. Okay, so that's it, let's try it. Let's enter 4, 2, and you can see my combination is 6. Okay, so that is for the combination part. The same concept I am going to apply again. Okay, quickly let's duplicate this and create a function for permutation, and instead of comp I will be sending permutation, right, that is this variable, right, and I have to define this function. Now let's copy this entire thing, paste it, and it's the same function, the same variables. Instead of this, it will not matter much, but still I just renamed it. Okay, and This formula is slightly different for permutation. There is no r factorial here, right? So I will just remove this part, and this is the formula for permutation, right? And I think remaining everything is perfect. I just have to print the permutation now. So permutation is, and that's it. It's that simple. I will just run this again for 5,3. You can see I have combination 10 and permutation 60. Okay, so I just let me just add a \n, and one last time let's run this. So 3,2 gives me combination as 3 and permutation as 6. Perfect. Okay, so I hope you have understood this program and how I have used pointers to find out the permutation and combination. Okay, so we will see you in the next task.